up, for example, in the community of Kentville, from a few years ago being in the range of $1,200, it's now upwards of $2,000 because of the pressure that we've seen. Now, all three levels of government have to be a part of this. I'll say a little bit more. Madam Speaker, I see my time is quickly coming to a close. I will carry on after question period, and I'll look forward to my colleagues giving me questions, but let me give way to SO31s. Thank you.
The honourable member will have 2 minutes and a half to conclude his speech after oral questions. Statements by members. Déclaration des députés, l'honorable député de Don Valley North.
The honourable member for Don Valley North.
Brampton Centre. Brampton Centre.
Madam Speaker, we mourn the lives lost in Quebec mosques 7 years ago today and recognize the trauma suffered by Canada's Muslim community on account of Islamophobia. We also mourn the tens of thousands of civilians, including thousands of innocent children who have been killed by Israel in Gaza. The majority of Gaza's traumatized surviving population has been displaced and needs humanitarian intervention. 3 days ago, the International Court of Justice ordered Israel to take immediate and effective measures to enable the provisions of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Out of respect for rule of law, Canada should help Israel to comply with that order. Canada and its allies should reinstate UNRWA funding, considering the devastating humanitarian crisis in Palestine. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
The honourable member for Don Valley North.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. Speaker, Happy New Year to you and everyone in the House. Over the past holiday season, our diverse communities in Don Valley North and across Canada have come together to celebrate a range of festivities, including Hanukkah, Shabbat Yoda, Christmas, and the New Year. Building on the spirit of celebration and diversity, I'd like to remind the House of a motion passed in 2016, which recognized the Lunar New Year to highlight our vibrant Asian communities and the invaluable contribution these Canadians are making in our society. The auspicious dragon symbolizes strength and prosperity. This year, the dragon heightens fortune for those born in the year of rat, tiger, horse, and rooster. Speaker, I want to wish everyone a happy, healthy, and prosperous Lunar New Year. 恭喜發財，新年快樂！四喜卜，萬里百的笑，長命難會。Thank you, Speaker.
The honourable member from Thornhill.
There are many kinds of silence. The silence of indifference, the silence of complicity, and the silence of cowardice. The government's refusal to take a clear position on South Africa's baseless case at the ICJ, their about-face on their once respectable UN voting record, and their abject failure to protect Jews in this country betrays all three of those vices. Calls for the extermination of Jews in Canada have been normalized by this morally bankrupt Liberal brain trust. On Canadian values, the Prime Minister responds with silence, only to amplify the hate. Worse, he stokes it. This weekend's International Holocaust Remembrance Day should have been a stark reminder that never again is right now. Silence in the face of lies can be as damaging as the deliberately confusing positions of this Prime Minister. He has one group of MPs say one thing to one community, and he sends another group to say the exact opposite to another community. The calculated silence may be deafening, but everyone hears the shameful cynicism loud and clear, and Canadians will get the moral clarity they deserve.
The honourable member from St. John's East.
With 2024 in full swing, our team are tackling the issues Canadians are facing head on with affordable housing, the Canada Child Benefit, childcare, dental care, affordable home heating, green jobs, and more money back in their pockets. And for St. John's East, I'm focused on supporting residents through my constituency office, ensuring Newfoundland and Labrador's unique needs are heard in Ottawa, and building more housing, supporting seniors and families, and more local jobs. We are putting Canadian families first, and it doesn't involve cuts, far-right tactics, and exploiting people's fares. That may get social media likes, but it does not get the job done. We are pushing forward with legislation to help Canadians, all of which the opposition has voted against, signaling what they will do if they are in government. Thank you.
The honourable member for Drummond.
Roger Pomerleau passed away. A piece of Quebec's soul has died with him. He loved his language and his culture. Roger Pomerleau was a Bloc Québécois member of Parliament from 93 to 97. And then in Drummond in 2008, after Pauline Picard. In the Bloc and in the Parti Québécois, Roger is remembered. He was a former member, and we remember him. He was a man of great conviction, flawless integrity, and most of all, he was a man of action. Roger Pomerleau has gone on to join other great members of our family, Leclerc, Landry, Falardeau, other members who passed away and are painting the sky blue. Roger, we will keep our promise to you, and we will honor all the work that you did for your cause. Goodbye, Roger. The Honourable Member for Sherbrooke. Happy New Year. I'd like to wish all Sherbrookeers a Happy New Year. I wish you a year full of opportunities that you'll be able to take advantage of and full of caring and kindness to preserve our safe and healthy community. And I wish you wellness and health. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my entire team who, day after day, meet people's needs with skill and compassion and support me in every aspect of my work. I thank Olivia, who is professional and experienced, Jacques, who is passionate and sensitive. I thank Gabrielle, who is competent and understanding, Marie, who is creative and available, Clémence, who is courteous and efficient, Clément, who is curious and versatile, and Jocelyne, who manages the finances so meticulously. I'm deeply grateful to be able to count on such a capable and dedicated team. Your commitment helps us offer high-quality service and creates a positive and inspiring work environment. Thank you for everything, and Happy New Year to you all.
Honourable Member from Fundy Royal.
Mr. Speaker, this NDP Liberal government is not worth the cost to Canadian freedom. In a landmark victory for the freedoms of all Canadians, the federal court has just confirmed what most Canadians already knew, that the use of the Emergencies Act in 2022 was illegal and unconstitutional. 2 years ago, this Prime Minister decided to violate the charter rights of Canadians to deal with a political crisis of his own making. The decision to invoke the Emergencies Act directly violated Canadians' most essential rights to freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression. The federal court found that the illegal use of the Act, the reasons were not provided for the decision to declare a public order emergency, and they did not satisfy the requirements of the Emergencies Act. A Conservative government led by the Leader of the Opposition will ensure that the Emergencies Act can never again be used to silence political opposition. Conservatives will always defend the right.
The Honourable Member from Kitchener South Hespeler.
Mr. Speaker, on Monday, January 15th, the Waterloo region lost a great community leader with the passing of Wendy Campbell, the former CEO of the Waterloo Region Food Bank, a position she held for 15 years. Wendy stepped up and completely revamped the delivery of food during the outbreak of COVID-19, which instantly precluded volunteers and staff from sorting food donations. She packed a lifetime of service in her short 53 years, procuring over 40 million pounds of food for the Waterloo region and surrounding areas. Despite courageously battling cancer for 19 months, Wendy never lost the optimism which governed her life. My thoughts are with her husband, Craig, her parents, Robert and Barbara Oakes, and her children, Maddie and Ben, who lost their mother way too soon. She was truly inspirational and will be greatly missed by the entire community. May her memory be a blessing.
The Honourable Member from Pierrefonds-Dollard.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, 7 years ago, a heinous act took the lives of 6 men. 19 others were wounded. This occurred at the Islamic Cultural Center in Quebec City.
Bari, Khaled Belkacemi, Abdul Karim Hassan, Azadine Sufyan, Abu Bakr Tabdi. They were fathers, husbands, brothers, loved ones. They were targeted simply because of their faith, simply because they were Muslim. Unfortunately, Canada has seen also an alarming rise in discrimination as a result of the conflict in Gaza. People who are Muslim, Palestinians and Arabs, feel what's happening intensely. They're yelling on the inside, but asked to be patient and to endure. They're feeling their freedom of speech curtailed. Last year, our government appointed the first special representative on combating Islamophobia. She has done an excellent job in addressing the issues. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable member from l'honorable député de Lévis-Lotbinière.
The honourable member for Lévis-Lotbinière. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, life for Canadian families has never been so hard. But for him and his Liberal friends, life has never been so good. Clearly, a Prime Minister who takes $84,000 worth of free holidays is not aware of the hardships faced by Canadians who are currently struggling to make ends meet. Mr. Speaker, many Canadians can no longer afford to live or to dream. They've had to scale back or cancel their holiday plans altogether due to the Liberal policies that have driven up the cost of living. Once again, the Prime Minister has demonstrated that he is out of touch with Canadians and their reality. He's demonstrated that he thinks only of himself and he's not the right man for the job. And his cabinet is trying, as best as it can, to protect the Prime Minister's actions through various maneuvers. They're trying to distort the facts before the Ethics Commissioner's committee appearance. Canadians are not fools. They will remember this Prime Minister's actions and his lavish lifestyle.
The honourable member from Aurora Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill.
Thank you. As the month of January comes to an end, I want to take a moment to recognize Tamil Heritage Month. I had the pleasure of visiting the Hindu temple in my riding to celebrate Thai Pongal. I want to thank the president of the Senior Tamil Center, Puri Sitpan, for inviting me, and Henry Sue Supply for accompanying me. Keeping with the theme of Tamilicious Tamils and food, we celebrated Thai Pongal. We honor the vibrant and invaluable contributions Tamil Canadians have made to our country. We also recognize that Tamils face discrimination and persecution, and many came to Canada to escape this. Today, the National Day of Remembrance of the Quebec City Mosque attack and action against Islamophobia is a day that reminds us of this. Let's build a Canada where every individual, regardless of their background, feels that they belong. And let us all fight discrimination and hate to keep Canada the inclusive and welcoming nation we are proud to call home. Thank you.
The honourable member from Lambton, Kent, Middlesex.
Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, life in Canada has become unaffordable. It is unthinkable to continue the inflationary carbon tax scheme while millions of Canadians are relying on food banks and are forced to choose between heating and eating. This government surely understands that there is no way to produce food without using energy to dry grain or heat barns to bring food to our grocery stores. And the Prime Minister, well, he wants to quadruple the carbon tax from 14 cents a litre to 61 cents per litre. Farmers in my communities are paying thousands of dollars in carbon tax every month. The Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. The carbon tax carve-out is necessary for farmers to help fight food inflation. In response to the government's relentless pressure, the so-called independent senators gutted Bill C-234. I call on the House to stop with the desperate tricks that are preventing farmers from getting the needed carve-out, drop the Senate amendments, and send Bill C-234 back to the Senate in its original form.
The honourable member from Sarnia-Lambton.
Over the holidays, I heard how after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canadians are struggling to pay their bills and keep a roof over their heads. They know that this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. Mr. Speaker, I and my Conservative colleagues and our leader are back to show Canadians that they have a simple choice in the next election. On the one hand, you can have a costly coalition of the NDP and Liberals that take your money, tax your food, punish your work, double your housing costs, and unleash crime and chaos in your communities. Or you can choose the common sense Conservatives and our common sense plan. We are back to address the priorities facing Canadians, starting with a focus on passing Bill C-234 to take the carbon tax off farmers and bring food prices down. Our priorities are clear. Axe the tax, build the homes, fix the budget, stop the crime. Let's bring it home.
The honourable member from Mississauga, Erin Mills.
Mr. Speaker, 7 years ago today, peaceful Muslim worshippers were gunned down in Quebec. 3 years ago, when the Afzal family were brutally murdered because of their faith, every single political party leader in this House stood on the steps of the London Mosque and recognized that Islamophobia is real and vowed to protect the Muslim community in the face of hatred. Today, on the National Day of Remembrance of Quebec City Mosque attack and action against Islamophobia, we not only commemorate the victims and survivors, but also reflect on whether we have taken action to combat Islamophobia in all of its forms, including the suppression of expression. Our government declared January 29th a National Day of Remembrance, invested millions in our national anti-racism strategy, and appointed a special representative on combating Islamophobia. More needs to be done by all political leaders in this House and indeed all Canadians. We remember, Mr. Speaker.
L'honorable député de Rosemont.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont, La Petite Patrie. January 29th, 2017. It's almost 8 p.m. and evening prayers have just ended at Quebec City's Grand Mosque. Suddenly, a young man bursts in and opens fire on those there. He killed 6 men and he wounded 19 others in what was the worst racist terrorist attack in Quebec's history. In the weeks and months leading up to this mass crime, the young man had immersed himself in far-right and white supremacist websites. Fueled by fear and hatred, he committed an unspeakable act. He coldly, methodically murdered people because they were Muslim. This reminds us that words and speech are important. Every word has an impact. We have a collective responsibility to fight Islamophobia and all forms of racism and dehumanization of any group of people. Let's work together toward kindness, dialogue, understanding, and togetherness to build a world for everyone.
L'honorable député de Salaberry-sur-Roi.
The Honourable Member for Salaberry-sur-Roi. 7 years ago, a killer killed 6 and wounded 19 among those praying at Quebec City's Grand Mosque. They were targeted because they were Muslim. This terrorist event shocked Quebec. We all realized that we were not safe from heinous acts. We all need to be vigilant. Society needs to be vigilant. We all have a part to play in fighting intolerance. If some people need to hear it again, then let's make it clear. Freedom of worship is guaranteed in Quebec. No one should feel threatened because of their faith. Our thoughts today are with the loved ones of the victims. To all Quebecers who will always live with the scars of this event, we all stand together in saying, never again. The Honourable Member for Carleton. Mr. Speaker, today is a very hard day for the Muslim community, the community in Sainte Foy and everywhere in Canada. This is actually a hard day for all Canadians. We mourn the 6 lives which were stolen by a hateful terrorist at the Grand Mosque of Quebec City 7 years ago on this day.
People who suffered injuries in addition to those murdered, and the many others who are left with mental scars that will never fully heal. As we reflect on the tragic fate that they suffered as a result of this evil monster, we must also reflect on the promise of freedom, peace, and safety that they were guaranteed as Canadians, that was viciously stolen by the forces of hate and Islamophobia. It must never happen again. We must stand on guard for our Muslim friends and neighbors, for all Canadians, to have the right and the freedom to worship in peace and security.
The Honourable Member from Richmond Hill.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise to honor Dr. Satyajyoti Salvacom, a proud Tamil Canadian who lived a life of extraordinary service and impact. Like countless Tamil Canadians, Satyajyoti and her family were forced to flee the Tamil genocide in Sri Lanka, having personally endured the horrors of communal violence in the 1958 anti-Tamil program. Satyajyoti became a pillar of the early Tamil community in British Columbia, helping to house, fed, and translate for newly arrived Tamil refugees. She and her husband invested their time and resources to uplift the community while giving voice to atrocities unfolding in their homeland. In 2022, Satyajyoti helped establish a Tamil chair at the University of Toronto to help preserve the Tamil language. On January 3rd, surrounded by the love of her daughters, Sahinia and Meera, Satyajyoti peacefully departed from this world. She will be remembered as a loving mother, lifelong learner.
À la suite,
following discussions among representatives of all parties in the House, I understand that there is an agreement to observe a moment of silence to commemorate the National Day of Remembrance of the Quebec City mosque attack and action against Islamophobia. I now invite honourable members to rise to honour the memory of the victims of the attack that happened 7 years ago on January 29th, 2017.
Silence. Questions orales.
Oral questions.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
I will begin by wishing a welcome back to Canada to the Prime Minister after his great vacation costing $89,000 free that he got as a gift, just like any other Canadian who gets a vacation like that. And he's not talking about the 2 million Canadians who have to go to a food bank or to the students in Montreal who have to use homeless shelters after his policies tripled rent in his home city. Will he overturn these inflationary policies that have made it difficult? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, 7 years ago, 6 Muslim Canadians were killed and 19 others seriously wounded during a terrorist attack at the Quebec City Mosque in Sainte-Foy because of their religious beliefs. We mourn the loss of these people who were murdered in cold blood, and we stand with those who have suffered from Islamophobia and hate. Over the course of the last months, Muslim Canadians have seen a concerning rise in hate speech and discrimination, and more than ever before, we need to stand together. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, 2 million Canadians have to go to a food bank. Students have to live in homeless shelters. In Quebec City, the cost of housing has doubled. In Montreal, it has tripled. Across Canada, the cost of housing has doubled since this Prime Minister promised to reduce the cost of housing. Will he finally overturn the policies that create bureaucracy and inflation to allow developers to ensure affordable housing for people who need it? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader is launching personal attacks to deviate the debate on housing and to avoid that people recognize the fact that he has no plan. Canadians know that it's not with slogans that housing will be built. He has tried in vain to delay the elimination of the GST on rental housing. He voted against the Housing Acceleration Fund, which allowed the construction, or will allow the construction of more than 500,000 housing units. There's a lot of progress being done, and we will continue to do that. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Minister back from his $80,000 vacation, which he got for free. He said, like most Canadians, friends welcomed him for that vacation. He took two, not one, but two private jets paid for by the taxpayer, burning 100 tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. He wants to tax the heat and the food of Canadians. Did he pay the full carbon tax on each of the 100 tons of emissions that he put into the atmosphere as part of his $80,000 vacation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, the Conservative leader has simply no plan to address climate change in this country, no plan to increase the resilience of our communities in the fight against climate change. Warming climate causes droughts. Droughts damage crops. Damaged crops increase the cost of groceries. And yet, the Conservative Party cannot even agree on whether or not climate change is real. Mr. Speaker, we will achieve our emissions reductions, all the while sending Canadians checks to help with the costs of rising prices. They're a real solution.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, he says that greenhouse gas emissions are driving up grocery prices. He put 100 tons of those emissions in the atmosphere for his personal vacation. This is high tax, high flying, high carbon hypocrisy. Yep. Meanwhile, Canadians in Edmonton were facing minus 50-degree temperatures on which they were paying carbon taxes just to heat their homes and stay alive. Given that he gives himself a free vacation at other people's expense, will he at least allow Canadians to heat their homes without his tax?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
The Conservative leader likes to talk about the challenges Canadians are facing on the cost of living, but he refuses to take action in support of them. He chose to delay the passage of Bill C-59, which is also hurting his own caucus.
That's right.
Does the member for Battleford's Lloydminster now suddenly oppose maternity leave for adoptive parents? Surely the member for Cumberland-Colchester won't back down on his advocacy to remove the GST on therapy and counseling services. While the Conservative leader is muzzling his own caucus and putting himself first, we'll keep putting Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This one is just too easy. He walked into it. He had to muzzle a member from Newfoundland who called for an end to his leadership, joining another senator who did the same, because they understand that their constituents are literally starving and unable to heat their homes because the Prime Minister is quadrupling the carbon tax, doubling housing costs, and giving the worst inflation in 40 years. Why won't he listen to, instead of intimidating his member for Newfoundland, and put his leadership up to a review for...
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, over the course of the fall, we've announced projects on housing that are going to create 500,000 new homes across this country over the year. We're working hand in hand with community leaders, with mayors. We're making sure that we're moving forward on the priorities that are facing Canadians. In terms of standing up for his caucus, the leader across the way will not even mention the fact that the person sitting 3 seats to his left dined with a far-right conservative German politician and wants to abolish the United Nations. Is abolishing the United Nations now the official position of the Conservative Party of Canada?
The Honourable Member for Beloeil-Chambly. It's going to be long, Mr. Speaker. This House passed a unanimous motion urging the government to consult Quebec and the provinces on immigration targets. Yet the government seems to be implementing policies suggested by Mackenzie, a Century Initiative, and even more, because if we continue at that rate, we'll go beyond 100 million by the end of the century. Is the government ignoring the unanimous vote of the House? or will it review its policies with Quebec and the provinces? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, immigration is essential for Quebec and Canada. Immigrants contribute to building new housing. They work in our healthcare system. They take part in economic growth of local businesses and more. We are meeting our economic needs. We're remaining true to our humanitarian commitments, and we're developing a stabilizing approach in immigration. Our immigration levels are based on our capacity to welcome and integrate newcomers, and we will continue the work in close collaboration with the provinces and territories, particularly Quebec, to ensure that the Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. If there is stabilization at the current numbers, there will be beautiful decades to come. I think we're hearing the end of the last session, and we're starting a new session. And let's have a new state of mind. Quebec sent a letter, and I think it's quite reasonable. It sent a letter to the Government of Canada to ensure that the distribution of asylum seekers to make it fair for everyone across Canada and Quebec. Is the government looking at that to ensure Quebec's demographic weight is respected? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. We know that Quebec has always been extremely generous when it comes to asylum seekers. We saw that with Roxham Road, and we see it with the situation that is now present. We will continue to be there to support the Quebec system and communities that are welcoming newcomers with their generosity, knowing that everybody has to do their fair share. Yes, we intend to work with Quebec and the provinces to ensure a better distribution, but also to resolve the challenges that are caused by this increase in temporary residence applications and asylum seekers. The Honourable Member for Burnaby South. Thank you.
Really bad. The city of Edmonton had to declare a housing and homeless emergency while the Conservatives are laughing about homeless people and a housing crisis. Toronto also had to declare one as well. Again, you'll hear the Conservatives laughing because they have no concern for people who are struggling with housing or homeless. And this Liberal government doesn't care either. They have been in power for 9 years and they don't get it. The Prime Minister doesn't get it. The Liberal Minister for Edmonton doesn't get it. And the 24 Liberal MPs in Toronto don't get it. Why does this government wait until things are at a breaking point before acting?
To date, things were going quite well, but I would ask the members, the member for Edmonton West, the member for St. Margaret South Shore, please. Don't speak unless the chair recognizes you. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Use every tool at our disposal to address housing affordability. We meant it. The Minister of Housing recently announced that the post-secondary institutions can now access the apartment construction loan program for low-interest financing to build student housing. This builds on our work to find innovative and bold ideas to accelerate construction, including unlocking over 500,000 new homes through the Housing Accelerator agreements. More examples of the federal government in action.
Very good.
The Honourable Member for Burnaby South.
Doesn't get it. Quelle surprise.
What a surprise. The Prime Minister broke yet another promise. The renoviction rate in Canada is at a record high, and yet he is refusing to tackle major investors like he promised. Why does the Prime Minister say one thing during the election campaign and then defend his friend's profits once elected? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we are taking action on a number of fronts. So we're promoting the construction of housing and co-ops by eliminating the GST on construction. We're ensuring that more houses are built faster, working closely and directly with the municipalities. We're helping Canadians save to build a home with the tax-free savings account for the purchase of a first home. There's more work to be done. I invite all governments across the country to be bold with us to improve the cost of housing and the construction of affordable housing.
From Regina Capel.
The Prime Minister must still have sand in his ears from his Jamaican vacation. That must be why he can't hear the outcry from Canadians suffering from his carbon tax. While he was lining up at the all-inclusive, Canadians were lining up at food banks, and grocery prices jumped again, 38% higher than baseline inflation. Now, common sense Conservative Bill 234 will help bring prices down by taking the tax off of farm production. The only problem, Liberal senators gutted the bill. Yep. Will the government reject the Senate amendments so that the tax can come off and food prices can come down?
Yes.
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, our government absolutely understands that the housing and the cost of living are challenges for Canadians. That is why we are aggressively working across the country to build more homes faster. The Housing Accelerator Fund, with more than 30 agreements in place across Canada, will lead to 500,000 new homes being built. But the question, Mr. Speaker, is what will the Conservatives cut? They know how to cut, they don't know how to build. And what Canada needs right now is builders.
The Honourable Member from Regina Capel.
We'll cut the waste and mismanagement that's driving up inflation in the first place, like the infrastructure bank, like high-priced consultants, and like sending money to the Asian infrastructure bank to build projects overseas instead of here at home. Yeah. But the question was about the carbon tax and why the Prime Minister is so pathologically obsessed with it. He doesn't care that Canadians are going to food banks, or that mothers are watering down milk, or that seniors are skipping meals. He even sent one of his ministers to go bully Liberal senators into gutting the bill. So once again, will they reject the Senate amendments so that the tax can come off farmers and food prices can come down?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
You know, Mr. Speaker, when the Conservatives talk about working families, everyone knows those are crocodile tears. This is the party that has voted against early learning and child care, a revolutionary national program which is bringing down costs for hundreds of thousands of families across the country and allowing women to go to work. These Conservatives have voted against the Canada Child Benefit, a huge support for families across the country. And, Mr. Speaker, they're going to vote against dental care, too. Excellent.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
Today, the Prime Minister has an opportunity to help families struggling with high food costs. Bill C-234 is back in the House after Liberal-appointed senators delayed and gutted that bill. This is a common-sense Conservative bill that will give carbon tax carve-out to farmers and ensure that Canadians have access to affordable Canadian-grown food. But when the Prime Minister quadruples his carbon tax, farmers will pay $1 billion a year, driving up food costs even higher. So will the Liberals reject the Senate amendments, take the carbon tax off farmers, and lower food prices for Canadians?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Let me tell you what is common sense for working families across our country. It is common sense to have a national system of early learning and childcare with fees reduced by 50% across the country and down to $10 a day in 7 provinces and territories. It is common sense to support hardworking families with the Canada Child Benefit that has lifted millions of children and families out of poverty. And it is common sense to do what we're going to do this year, which is provide dental care to our seniors, having provided it to our children. The Conservatives oppose every single one of those things.
The Honourable Member from Foothills.
It is uncommon to see a government ignore the fact that 2 million Canadians are going to a food bank every single month. And yet the Liberal NDP Carbon Tax Coalition wants to quadruple that carbon tax, making farming unsustainable. When you tax the farmer who grows the food, you tax the trucker who hauls the food, you are increasing taxes on Canadians who buy the food. Again, millions of Canadians are going to a food bank every month, but 234 in its original form will provide relief now. Will the Liberals reject the Senate amendments, take the tax off, and ensure Canadians can afford to put food on their tables?
The Honourable Minister for Agriculture and Agri-Food.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank my honourable colleague for his question.
but being a farmer, I fully understand how important environmental plan is for the government. I'm sorry, but his party does not have an environmental plan. We as a government do have an environmental plan. And with that environmental plan, for example, Mr. Speaker, we're able to invest $1.5 billion into farmers and ranchers across this country to make sure they stay on the cutting edge. We have and will continue to make sure farmers and ranchers stay on the cutting edge. Thank you.
The honourable member from Lethbridge.
Never before have we seen ignorance used as a political strategy the way this Liberal government uses it. It's shameful. At the end of the day, Canadians are struggling day in and day out to be able to heat their homes, to be able to put food on their tables, and to be able to care for their families. And the carbon tax only increases that cost more. And what do you know? On April 1st, the carbon tax is scheduled to go up yet again. This government is going to hike it again on April 1st. So would this government choose to put its feet into reality and to acknowledge the struggle that everyday Canadians face and show a little bit of compassion, scrap the tax, stop the increase?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
You know, Mr. Speaker, earlier today the Conservatives were talking about hypocrisy, and that is a subject they know a lot about. They are particularly hypocritical when it comes to talking about supporting working families and the most vulnerable. Since we formed government, 2.3 million Canadians have been lifted out of poverty. The poverty rate in Canada has been cut in half. And you know what they want to do next? They want to take carbon price rebate checks out of the bank accounts of Canadian families. That's $1,000 in Ontario, more than $1,000 in Alberta, Saskatchewan. That will hurt Canadians.
The honourable member from Lethbridge.
There's this government's false perception of reality, and then there's the reality that everyday Canadians are experiencing. I would invite the honourable member to consider what the reality actually is. If she could only come down from her high horse and enter into the everyday life of Canadians, she might understand. Not everyone lives in downtown Toronto and has access to the luxuries that she does. Canadians are struggling. They are struggling to put food on their tables. They are struggling to pay their heating bills. They are struggling to be able to care for their families. Record numbers of Canadians are using food banks, and it has a lot to do with the carbon tax, which is scheduled to increase on April 1st. Will this government axe the tax?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
It's certainly the case that the vast majority of Canadians do not have access to the luxuries that the Leader of the Opposition enjoys. Government-provided housing, a chef, people caring for his home. So let's be fair, people who live in glass houses should be more careful about throwing stones. When it comes to the price on pollution, that returns more money to 8 out of every 10 Canadians. Families in Alberta will be getting more than $1,000 back. That helps them.
Hear, hear.
The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. New Year, same problems at the federal level. Quebec is completely overwhelmed by taking in asylum seekers. It has taken in more than 65,000 people in 2023. That's 45% of the total for Canada, but we only represent 22% of the population. That's far more than our fair share. Quebec is now at a breaking point, and it's not us saying it. It's the Premier of Quebec in a letter from 17th of January addressed to the Prime Minister of Canada. When will the federal government redistribute the asylum seekers with the provinces? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, I want to wish my Bloc colleague, welcome him back to the House. I think that we're not going to do it, we're going to do the work on the backs of the immigrants. We're prepared to make an additional effort. Quebec has done more than its fair share, clearly, but we're here to work together. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean, I would invite all the political parties to be careful when we talk about the immigration issue, and I would say that you would have thought that the federal government or the Liberals would have learned their lesson, that not only are the problems being failed to be addressed, but they're not resolved, they're getting worse. When the House recessed in December, the federal government owed $460 million to Quebec for taking in asylum seekers, and it even said it wasn't automatic. It wasn't a bank machine. Now the bill is $470 million. When will the government pay back Quebecers? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and citizenship. First of all, Mr. Speaker, there's good news to come this week. It's clear that it's a two-way relationship. We continue to work with Quebec to deal with the asylum seekers. It's not too close to being over, but it takes both levels of government. The Honourable Member for Lac-Saint-Jean. Quebec is also demanding that the federal government restore visas for Mexicans. Since the Liberals suspended the visa requirement, the number of asylum seekers by Mexicans went from 110 in 2015 to 24,000 last year, but the majority of these applications are being refused. That means that the majority of these individuals are not refugees. We know that these people can be subject to trafficking by Mexican crime syndicates along the Canadian border. They're being exploited, Mr. Speaker. Will the minister restore visas for Mexicans? The Honourable Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship. Mr. Speaker, we are dealing with historic levels, not just from Mexico, but it's clear, as I said publicly, that it's important to take a stricter view. This is not something that details are being discussed publicly. So decisions will be made. I would call for patience, but we need to act.
From Thornhill.
Every time the Prime Minister comes back from another extravagant vacation he didn't pay for, or Cabinet decides to have a meeting in a luxury hotel, more Canadians are without a home that's affordable, and even more are worried about losing it. After 8 years, they've doubled the cost of a home, the price of rent, and a down payment that you need to buy one. Interest payments on a mortgage are going up a staggering 30% this year. 8 years of Liberal NDP government's inflationary spending has made owning a home unattainable. So how can anyone trust the people that created the crisis to fix it?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, the opposition seems interested in drawing on the anxieties that people are experiencing that are very real when it comes to housing affordability in this country. However, when you actually look at the plan they're putting forward, it's clear they have no idea what they are talking about. Where we are reducing taxes for home builders, they want to put taxes back on. Where we are making investments to promote affordable housing, they plan on making cuts. In fact, they want to do away with the Housing Accelerator Fund, which has now created 30 agreements that's going to see 500,000 homes added over the next decade. We will build the homes, they will make the cuts. Canadians can make their choice.
Hear, hear. The Honourable Member from Thornhill.
Speaker, those are photo ops the minister is talking about. Home construction was actually down 7% last year. That's even worse than his nameless predecessor who was fired from the gig. You cannot live in a photo op. The videos won't bring warmth to the 300,000 people without homes. His tweets won't help the single mom who's trying to make her mortgage payment next month. And his press conferences will not help the thousands of young people trying to move out of their parents' basement. Why won't he stop subsidizing the bureaucracy who are blocking construction and focus on getting builders with shovels in the ground?
That's right. The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
What the Conservatives dismiss as photo ops are binding agreements with cities that have led to them to already change their rules to get more homes built. What they dismiss as press conferences included a new measure this morning that's going to extend low-cost loans to colleges and universities and builders to help those young people find a home and to free up supply in communities. And if they are concerned with housing stats as the appropriate metric, I would point out never once when the opposition leader was the housing minister did he get as many homes built as we did last year.
Hey! The Honourable Member from Kelowna Lake Country.
After 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, Canada's housing crisis keeps getting worse. Canada saw over 17,000 less housing starts in 2023 than in 2022. And the average asking rent in British Columbia is now $2,500 a month. Working class people are living in their cars in parking lots. And their own housing agency even said that there is no plan to build the number of houses that Canadians need here in this country. This Prime Minister is just not worth the cost. When will the Prime Minister have a plan to build houses, not bureaucracy?
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, we have a plan to build houses. In fact, we have a plan to build houses in real communities. Let's take the Honourable Member's constituency as an example. She represents represents the good people of Kelowna. Not only have we put programs in place that supported affordable housing in her community, we have invested $31.5 million to change the way that homes get built permanently in Kelowna. This is going to add up to 20,000 new homes to the stock in the cities that she represents. And on both the plan to change the way the city builds homes and the specific project, she voted against the programs that fund them. I think we can rest our case, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member from New Westminster, Burnaby.
Hate led to the murder of 6 worshippers at the Quebec City Mosque 7 years ago today. They were killed in cold blood because they were Muslim. The perpetrator of this Islamophobic terrorism was influenced by the hate that continues to multiply online. This Prime Minister promised to take action to combat online hate within his first 100 days in office. Years have passed and there is still no action. When are the Liberals finally going to crack down on online hate? When will they take action?
Hear, hear. Minister for Justice and Attorney General for Canada.
I want to thank the member opposite for that question and acknowledge that today is the 7th anniversary of a terrorist attack at the Quebec City Mosque, where we commit ourselves to commemorate those victims and also to take action on Islamophobia. The point he's raising about Islamophobia and about all forms of hate is a very, very important one. We know that the radicalization of people that take violent and sometimes lethal acts in this country is fueled by what they learn online. That's why we are committed to addressing this matter in a comprehensive piece of legislation that will tackle this pernicious issue and will address and promote the safety of Canadians.
The honourable member from Edmonton Strathcona.
The same day that the ICJ ruled that there is a risk of genocide in Gaza, the Liberals paused funding to UNRWA, which is a lifeline for millions of innocent Palestinians. People will lose their lives. And unbelievably, the Conservative leader has accused 30,000 UNRWA humanitarian workers of being terrorists. He does not deserve to lead. We support an investigation into the 12 former staff, but defunding UNRWA is collective punishment and it is illegal. When will the Liberals stop abandoning Palestinians?
The Honourable Minister for International Development.
My colleague for that important question. These allegations are extremely disturbing and we take them very seriously. We've communicated that to the head of UNRWA, Philippe Lazzarini. What we're doing, which is the prudent thing to do, is to pause funding while this investigation is ongoing. We will continue to be there for Palestinian civilians through working with like-minded partners on the ground, trusted partners who are doing important work to deliver life-saving food, medicine, and other much-needed supplies to the people of Gaza.
The honourable member from Richmond Centre.
Mr. Speaker, through the Housing Accelerator Fund, our government is partnering with the City of Richmond with a tremendous investment on housing in our community, building over 1,000 new housing units, way more than what the Conservative government had done. While the Conservative leader continues to marginalize our municipal partners, our government is committed to working together with municipalities like Richmond to build more homes faster. Can the minister share with my community how we are working with our local municipality to build more homes faster in the City of Richmond? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister for Housing, Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank my honourable colleague not just for his work to secure $35.9 million for the City of Richmond, but for the thousands of homes that will be built as a result of the changes that we are incentivizing. We are putting federal money on the table to permanently change the way that cities build homes, to create more density near the services, infrastructure, and post-secondary education institutions that people need to do well in their community. This program is creating thousands, hundreds of thousands of homes across the country, including in Richmond, and I once again want to thank my colleague and congratulate him on his important work.
The Honourable Member for Lévis-Lobinière. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this government, in the Prime Minister's own writing, rent has gone from $760 a month to $2,249 a month. That's 3 times the costs. This Prime Minister just thinks about himself. He traveled to Jamaica at $9,000 a day on the taxpayer's dime. Can he come back to reality in Canada and take care of Canadians' housing problems, including in his own riding, Papineau, in Montreal? The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructures and Communities. Well, Mr. Speaker, This opposition leader's solution is to state that mayors are incompetent. That is not at all appropriate. We are doing everything we need to build affordable housing in La Belle Province. For example, we signed an agreement with Quebec to build 8,000 new affordable housing units. We will continue to make these important and essential investments to build a great many new homes quickly. The honourable member. Mr. Speaker, I would have very much liked to be a fly on the wall when I heard the discussion between the Prime Minister and the Mayor of Montreal about housing. The Plante administration blocked the construction of 25,000 new houses and apartments. And the Prime Minister is repaying that incompetence by continuing to send the mayor blank checks. Clearly, no solution came out of that meeting. So why not link money to municipalities to the number of housing starts? That's just common sense. The Honourable Minister of Transport. Mr. Speaker, everyone knows that in order to succeed in housing, you need to cooperate with buildings and the private sector, with municipalities and the private sector. Just the opposite of what the leader of the opposition is doing. He's insulting the mayor of Montreal, the mayor of Quebec City. He's insulting Quebecers. We don't need him, Mr. Speaker. We know how to build homes, and we don't need him to come along and just insult Quebecers. The honourable member for Chicoutimi. Mr. Speaker, after 8 years of this Prime Minister, rent has never been so high. The cost of rent has doubled, and there isn't enough housing in the first place. We have now learned that there are hundreds of new homeless encampments in our regions, such as in the Saguenay region. That's what Canada is like now under this government. People are in the street because they don't have enough money to put a roof over their heads, or because there's just not enough housing. When will the Liberals finally listen to our common sense plan and build housing? The Honourable Minister of Fisheries and Oceans. Well, instead of insulting people, Mr. Speaker, I would like to tell my colleague that several weeks ago, the member for Pont-Neuf, Jacques Cartier, insulted people from the Magdalen Islands, and he still hasn't apologized. I have a simple question. Will this member criticize his colleague's words, or will he simply bury his head in the sand? We are very proud Quebecers in the Magdalen Islands were waiting for an apology. My colleague should stand up and apologize. The Honourable Member for Chicoutimi-Le-Fjord. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister should support competent mayors who have sped up housing builds in places like Victoriaville, Trois-Rivières, and Saguenay. Montreal, on the other hand, has seen its housing starts decrease by 37% over last year, and in Quebec City, 40%. Once our leader is elected, he will give federal bonuses to towns that speed up housing starts. When will the Liberals finally listen to our common sense plan and finally build more homes? The Honourable Minister of Housing, Infrastructure and Communities. Mr. Speaker, it is absolutely extraordinary to hear this kind of thing on the floor of the House of Commons. It's up to the federal government to sign agreements with the provinces, not municipalities. We are continuing to build housing more quickly and more affordable housing, and I hope that the Conservative Party will support us. The Honourable Member for Terrebonne. Mr. Speaker, the federal government's stubbornness on the emergency loans is pushing our SMEs to bankruptcy. After the January 18th deadline, some SMEs have lost $20,000 in grants, which means that businesses that are already struggling to pay back the $40,000 now have $60,000 in debt. That's a death sentence. The federal government could either let them keep the $20,000 or it could secure the loans. Why not give these businesses an opportunity to pay back the loans?
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker, we know that this is still a very difficult time for small businesses. They still have nearly 3 years to pay the money back. We extended the deadline for these loans to ensure that small businesses can concentrate on recovering after the pandemic. We are also helping startups with their taxes, and we are reducing credit card fees by up to a quarter. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Talbot. Well, it sounds like the Liberals are saying that there's nothing to look at here, that everything is fine. If that were really true, entrepreneurs wouldn't have had to remortgage their houses or take out personal loans to pay back the federal government, and thousands of others are struggling to pay back the $40,000. So adding $20,000 more will be the end for them. The federal government will lose all that money unless it wants to start thousands of collections processes. We need to save these businesses so they can pay back the money. We need to give them a direct line of communication. We need to give them flexibility, and we need to let them have the $20,000. When will the government finally understand?
L'honorable ministre.
The Honourable Minister. I'd like to inform my colleagues in the Bloc Québécois who seem very concerned that 80% of businesses have already paid back the entirety of their loans. I would also like to remind us that during COVID, the federal government invested to help businesses with rent, with wage subsidies. We also have many programs with Economic Development Canada and other federal institutions to help our small businesses.
Then I have the honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
In just 2 years, this Liberal NDP Prime Minister has doubled the interest payments on his explosive debt. That's more tax dollars going to bankers, bondholders, and this Finance Minister's Bay Street buddies than on health care. After 8 years, this Prime Minister is not worth the cost or his waste, like the $35 billion infrastructure bank that's built 0 projects, yet line the pockets of Liberal cronies. When will this Prime Minister cut the waste, cut the corruption, fix the budget to bring home lower prices, bring down inflation and interest rates?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we've already heard Conservative hypocrisy. Now we are hearing Conservative alarmism. So let's set the facts straight. The reality is Canada's public finances are sustainable, and that's not me talking. That is the credit ratings agencies, which have awarded Canada a AAA rating. It doesn't get better than that. But the real question Canadians need to ask themselves is, what would the Conservatives cut in their reckless and ideological pursuit of austerity? We've heard about them from healthcare. That's the first place they would go to make cuts.
The honourable member from Calgary Forest Lawn.
Well, first we're going to cut the amount of Liberal seats in this House and replace them with a common-sense Conservative government. And let me give this fast and furious Finance Minister some free, non-consultant advice. Why don't they cut woke policies like an axe the carbon tax to bring down the cost of gas, groceries, and home heating, and pass Bill C-234 for our farmers? Why don't they cut the $20 billion this Prime Minister gives to Liberal consultants to cover up the incompetency by his own cabinet? After 8 years, we all know this Prime Minister is not worth the cost. When will the Liberals fix the budget to bring down inflation and interest rates already?
The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance.
I'll tell you one thing we know they would cut for sure, because that's what their votes during the marathon voting session showed. They would cut, shamefully, our support for Ukraine. They would not send weapons to Ukraine. The member opposite is an MP for Alberta, and I would like to ask him what his heckling colleagues have just shouted. Why do they support Putin? Have they no shame? Have they no shame?
L'honorable député de Bellechasse, Les Échemins, Lévis.
The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Échemins, Lévis.
Depuis 8 ans, ce gouvernement...
Mr. Speaker, over the last 8 years, inflation has reached a record level, the debt has doubled, the government has never budgeted a single budget, has never balanced a single budget, and it's completely supported by the Bloc Québécois. Now we, the Conservatives, would balance the budget by getting rid of liberal waste, like, for example, the $54 million spent on ArriveCan. Will the Prime Minister admit that this is all his fault, and will he let common-sense Conservatives take over? Before asking the Deputy Prime Minister to answer, I would just like to remind us that the Chair has already made a statement about associating any political party with a completely unacceptable regime. That is very important to maintain decorum and respect in this House, so that we don't associate any political party with unacceptable regimes. The Honorable Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to public finances, it's very important to be clear and tell Canadians the truth. And for that reason, it's important to quote objective authorities like credit agencies, which continue to give Canada a AAA credit rating. My question for the Conservatives that all Canadians and Quebecers should ask: what will the Conservatives cut because of their austerity ideology? The Honourable Member for Châteauguay-Lacolle. Mr. Speaker, Canadians are working hard to buy a house, but we know that the Leader of the Opposition believes that slogans and attacks on municipal leaders will lead to more housing starts. Now, on this side of the House, we know that the federal government is responsible for leading the effort to make housing more affordable. Can the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance tell the House about how measures in the fall economic statement will enable us to build more housing more quickly? The Honourable Deputy Prime Minister. I'd like to thank my colleague for the question. Mr. Speaker, our government knows that we need to build more homes more quickly. And that's why, in the economic update, we're investing $15 billion further dollars in the apartment building loans program, which will enable us to build 100,000 more homes in the years to come. We are also removing GST on new housing development projects. We will continue to work hard to build more housing more quickly.
Grant. Speaker, after 8 years of this NDP Liberal government, it's clear the Prime Minister is not worth the cost. He gave us 3 different versions of his Jamaican vacation. First, he claimed he was paying all the expenses for his family's stay. Secondly, he claimed he was staying at no cost at a location owned by a family friend. And then he claimed that he and his family stayed with friends. Now, all 3 different versions cannot be accurate at the same time. Which version did he tell the Ethics Commissioner?
Here, here. The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and his family took a Christmas vacation. Before the trip, the Office of the Ethics Commissioner was consulted on the details to ensure the rules were followed. The Prime Minister and his family then proceeded with the trip, and all the rules were followed, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Sherwood Park. I didn't hear that. Excuse me, Fort Saskatchewan. Forgive me.
After 8 years, senior public servants have spoken out about lies and abusive process in the Arrive scam scandal. We've now learned that shortly after their critical whistleblowing testimony, these senior public servants were put on leave without pay. They were told they were under investigation less than 3 weeks after their testimony, and they were suspended before the investigation had even concluded. This NDP Liberal government is punishing public servants for their Arrive Can testimony. What are these Liberals trying to hide with this retaliation and intimidation of witnesses?
Here, here. What are you hiding?
The Honourable Minister for Public Security.
Mr. Speaker, on the contrary, senior officials of the Canadian Border Services Agency that are responsible for ensuring that all the appropriate contracting practices are followed have appeared before the committee, and my conversation in early January with the president of CBSA was to the effect that we should share with the committee looking into this information obtained by the internal audit. Mr. Speaker, CBSA is doing its important work to ensure that everyone is responsible for following the rules. They've called in the police where necessary, they've done internal audits, and will continue to do all of this to ensure taxpayers' value.
The Honourable Member from Edmonton Mill Woods.
For 8 years, this Prime Minister, he's just not worth the chaos and crime. Mr. Speaker, Canadian businesses across the country are being extorted by international gangsters because of the NDP Liberal government's ideological soft on crime policies. businesses and family homes are being shot at. In Edmonton, since November, over a dozen houses under construction by different home builders have been burnt down. It was this government that made it easier for criminals to get bail and allowed for shorter jail terms by scrapping mandatory minimum sentences. Mr. Speaker, when will they start cracking down on serious crime?
The Honourable Minister for Justice and Attorney General for Canada.
Speaker, I appreciate the question from the member opposite. And with respect to bail, what I would underscore is actually the unanimity with which this House spoke on amending the bail provisions so that we could keep communities safe. That was a sign of success in terms of what parliamentarians, when we cooperate on community safety, can achieve. What we continue to do is to keep crime and addressing crime as the topmost priority of our government. That means keeping communities safe. That means protecting victims. We'll continue to do that with respect to various issues that are facing Canadians, including auto theft with the summit, which is coming up in a few short days.
The Honourable Member from Vaughan Woodbridge.
Speaker, this week marks Red Tape Awareness Week. I would like to thank all the small businesses in my riding that have continued to show entrepreneurship and work hard to foster economic development here in Canada. We know that many of these businesses face administrative challenges in day-to-day operations, and our government has been there every step of the way to listen and adapt regulations to better suit their needs. The Conservative Party claims to care for small businesses, but yet calls supports for business inflationary. Mr. Speaker, can the President of the Treasury Board please tell this House how our government is supporting small businesses to build a stronger economy for all Canadians? Thank you.
The Honourable President of the Secretary of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for the question. Small businesses are the backbone of the Canadian economy, and we stood with small businesses during and after the pandemic, including in terms of reducing credit card transaction fees, establishing a program for small businesses in federal procurement, and assisting the tourism sector. Unlike the Conservatives, who have no plan to reduce red tape, we will continue to stand with small businesses with Bill S6. It's on second reading. We're bringing it back before the House, and we will create an efficient and effective economy for all small businesses. Thank you, Mr.
The Honourable Member from Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians are worried about the climate, and they expect their government to take action. People are struggling to pay for their bills, yet oil and gas CEOs are polluting our planet while raking in record profits and bonuses. In some cases, they've upped their own salaries by 75%. For far too long, this Liberal government has been stacking the deck in favor of billionaires at the expense of Canadian workers and the environment. Will the Liberals rein in these obscene bonuses by making oil and gas CEOs pay what they owe?
Hear, hear. The Honourable Minister for the Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to welcome back my honourable colleague to this House and say that I agree with her. I think that the profits of these companies must be addressed in this House, and that's what our government is doing by putting in place measures like no other countries in the world have put. We have put forward the world's most ambitious target to reduce methane emission, a very powerful greenhouse gas, to reduce them by at least 75% by 2030. We've eliminated fossil fuel subsidies, the only country in the G20 to have done so, and we're also in the process of putting a cap on the emissions of the oil and gas sector. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member from Saanich, Gulf Islands.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. We're on the theme of Liberal promises that keep being broken. Here's the question. We have Bill C-50, which is the Sustainable Jobs Act, which kicked down the road coming up with the Sustainable Jobs Plan till December 31st, 2025. Then it went to committee where all the Liberal MPs at present and all the NDP MPs present voted to extend that deadline to December 31st, 2040. Can the Honourable Minister tell us how this is going to be fixed? Can this be repaired? It so reminds me of Bismarck. Laws are like sausages, better not to watch.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Following months of Conservative filibustering and obstructionist tactics, they proposed over 21,000 amendments to the Sustainable Job Act in an attempt to stop workers from getting a seat at the table. When it came to a vote on these amendments, the committee was chaotic. The Conservative members were actually shouting over top of each other. A handful of the thousands Thousands of Conservative amendments were passed by the committee in the chaos. I encourage the Green Party leader to review the 9 amendments that I have put on the notice paper that address and rectify this issue now.
I wish to draw to the attention of members in the presence in the gallery of the Honourable Lori Hussar, Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Estonia, the Honourable Dega Mirenia, Speaker of the Parliament of the Republic of Latvia, and the Honourable Victoria Chemilite Nielsen, Speaker of the Parliament of Lithuania.
The honourable member for Portneuf-Jacques-Cartier, rising on a point of order. During question period, the fisheries minister, the member for Gaspésie-Les-Îles, claimed that I insulted the people of the Magdalen Islands. If people listen to the audio feed of what was actually said, well, I would like to ask the minister to...
Ça rentre très près de la ligne du débat, mais...
That sounds like a point of debate, but I will review the House of Commons transcripts.
14.
It being 3:15, pursuant to order adopted earlier this day, the honourable member for Montcalm, rising on a point of order. Mr. Speaker, I would like to make 2 points of order. Should I do them one after the other? All right. Mr. Speaker, could you please remind the member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis that we cannot knowingly mislead the House? The Bloc Québécois voted against the Liberal budget, so we do not support it. That's my first point of order. Thank you. That is a point of debate. I hope that this second point of order will be a point of order. Well, next time I will raise a question of privilege. Second, Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, it pains me to have to inform you of this, but before the House, you did not have control of this House, and that breached my parliamentary privilege during question period because I could not hear questions and answers. But it goes beyond that, Mr. Speaker. It was a breach of my privilege to have healthy hearing, to protect my ears. Yet again today, I felt that you lost control of this House. I could not hear questions, nor could I hear answers, unless I raised the volume to a level that is harmful to my hearing health, Mr. Speaker. So, I ask you to please quickly address this, because it is my privilege to understand and follow what is happening during question period without harming my ears. I appreciate the intervention from the member for Montcalm. This gives me the opportunity to once again remind all members to be silent while you do not have the privilege of speaking, when you have not been recognized by the chair. This is very important. This is important out of respect for order and decorum, but also, as the member for Montcalm mentioned, this is important for our health. We don't want members to have to raise the volume to properly hear questions and answers in the House of Commons. This is a duty that is incumbent upon us all. It being 3:17, pursuant to order made earlier today, I invite honourable members to rise and observe a moment of silence in honour of our former colleague, the late Honourable Ed Broadbent.
remercie. C'était un grand Canadien.
Thank you. He was a great Canadian. The House will now proceed to tributes to our honourable colleague, the late Honourable Ed Broadbent. I will now give the floor to the honourable member for Burnaby South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I want to begin by extending my condolences on behalf of all New Democrats to the family and friends and those who loved Ed Broadbent, his partner, Francis, his family, and of course his many friends. I also want to take a moment to thank the Prime Minister and the Canadian Heritage for yesterday's state funeral. It was a fitting tribute to Ed and his incredible life. And I want to thank everyone who helped to organize it and who participated, particularly the Broadbent Institute. I shared this story at the funeral, and I want to share it again. Every time I was at an event with Ed, and I could see him in the crowd, and I was speaking at that event, I would always take a moment to invite people to applaud the legendary Ed Broadbent. I'm not sure he always wanted that type of attention, but I did it anyway.